Hello, this is Cynthia Sue Larson with RealityShifters.com talking with you today about a question that someone asked me recently. Actually, several people have been asking it. What is the difference between this Mandela effect, where Nelson Mandela has been reported by some people to have died more than once, and I'm one of those people that remembers that he did pass away while incarcerated in South Africa, and then more recently, just a few years back. So what's the difference between that, the Mandela Effect, where we witness alternate histories, and manifestation? And the biggest difference that I would say is happening between those two things has to do with conscious intent. And by that, I mean when you are intending something to be a certain outcome, such as wishing, for example, that you've had a good night's sleep, even though your sleep last night was interrupted constantly by all sorts of noise, and if you looked at how long you'd slept, it was much less than you know you need. But scientific evidence suggests in recent years that all you need to do is tell yourself, I had a good night's sleep last night. Keep repeating that to yourself. Say it many times until you can start, on some level, believing maybe that's true. And what's been proven scientifically is that you will now, any kind of tests that are run on you, whether it's physical, mental, you name it, it's going to be showing the same kinds of results as if you had had a good night's sleep, compared to if you had a terribly interrupted night's sleep with less hours than you need, and you don't tell yourself that. So these are the kinds of things that we're learning from placebo studies, which are being conducted at places like Harvard's Placebo Institute Study Center, and other places around the world. So when we look at these differences and say, okay, with the manifestation, we're getting a science of this, and we're starting to see how it is possible that we can actually believe something and almost will it into being through conscious intent. And we're noticing that, as I mentioned in my new book, Quantum Jumps, you can do all kinds of things to increase your willpower, your ability to think more clearly, even your vision, your relationships, pretty much you name it. There's a way to actually improve your ability to do better at almost anything, just by basically sheer power of intent and recognizing that it's possible that those realities are already out there. That helps. And I share some of the tips for how to do that. And lots of people have been manifesting with the so-called law of attraction. It's similar, a little bit different, but basically this is one way to look at how you can so-called create things by attracting them. So then what's going on with the Mandela Effect? It seems to affect a lot more people. Groups of people remember alternate histories. And this is the sort of thing I describe in my book, Reality Shifts, which came out, the first version was written in 1999. And this is many years before the Mandela Effect was coined as a term to describe basically the same thing. Now, the Mandela Effect makes sense if you might have noticed Nelson Mandela being alive again. But some people who are very close to that man or lived in South Africa would definitely not relate to that term. So reality shifts is a more blanket term that I think fits the phenomenon overall, including the alive again phenomenon, and the fact that products can change, movies can change, books can change, history can change, and people are noticing that, usually in groups. I've conducted a couple of surveys on this exact thing to determine how people are experiencing these shifts of reality. And what I've noticed is that intent does play a part in it. As we intend something, then we start noticing these manifestations or quantum jumps, and when things just seem to change almost on their own, we're noticing it collectively, often with other people, with reality shifts, or what we call the Mandela Effect. And so the main difference on this continuum of experience of noticing alternate histories happens to be conscious intent. And then a correlated phenomenon is that the number of people experiencing things tends to be more people experiencing the reality shifts, like groups of people, whereas often one person or fewer people experience manifestation. And you can think of that making sense too with the conscious intent factor, because it's easier to bring people's intentions together when you have a smaller group or a smaller tribe working together. And the reason you can see the viewpoint that I express, which is that there's a continuum here, that this is all related. When you go from Mandela Effect to manifestation, that the continuum is happening, and it's visible when you notice flip-flopping realities. And this would be, for example, when my family and various individuals in my family noticed that our elderly dog sometimes appeared to be getting cataracts in his eyes. And each of us would notice that, come together, talk about it. And what I was helping our family members do is recognize that there is a flip-flop here. Sometimes the dog looked like he had cataracts, other times like his vision was fine. So I pointed this out to all the members of the family who were noticing this, and then the dog was fine. We all basically were collectively noticing, it's going back and forth, let's choose that our dog has good vision, and he did. And so what helps lock something like that in when you're doing a conscious intent and you're moving toward the quantum jumps is that you need to align your heart, your head, and your subconscious, all of you. This means doing your spiritual work, being a good person, being kind to others, so that you're not working at odds within yourself and within the community. When you do that, then you can work together with others and keep finding how good things can get collectively. So this is just a high-level exploration into manifestation and the Mandela Effect and the continuum that I feel these things are on as we wake up to the global quality of how we are all connected in both as humanity and on the planet consciousness together. We can start collectively collaborating toward bringing into being more and more positive realities, and noticing collectively that we can flip-flop between realities and bring something into being that's positive. So until next time, this is Cynthia Sue Larson with RealityShifters.com, asking you to keep asking my favorite question, how good can it get? Thanks so much.